What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college basketball, and we have finally made it. We've arrived. The Final Four, perhaps the best one of all time. Before we get started, thank you all that supported the channel. We recently crossed 1,000 subs, so hit that huge milestone. And I thank you very much to anyone that has supported. Even if that's just left a comment, like the video, watch for any length of time, all that does help, and it's not lost on me that you are choosing to spend some of your time with me. So thank you. I very much appreciate it. Last thing, if you or somebody knows a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. You must be 21 or older to play in most areas. We'll be talking about gambling a little bit, as usual. Let's dive right in. We have an awesome doubleheader. Florida takes on Auburn in the first game of the Final Four. It's a 2.5-point spread in favor of Florida, touching 3 in some spots. That's where it opened. It's been bouncing back and forth between 2.5 and 3 throughout the week. The total is 159.5. The only major injuries in the game, you had Condon go down with the ankle injury and then return. He has subsequently played a game, and it appears there's no real risk of Condon's ankle flaring up at this point, just worth mentioning. Johni Broome, what isn't he dealing with at this point? Earlier this season, separated a shoulder, sprained an ankle, looked like he re-sprained an ankle in their last game, and absolutely hyperextended his elbow. He's going to play. I think you can at least ask the question at what capacity, but as we know, Johni Broome is a warrior. He is going to be out there. Let's talk about resumes for each of these teams. We'll start with the Florida side. This is the number 3 team in the country overall. To get here, they beat Norfolk State, absolutely slaughtered them. In the round of 32, they beat UConn by 2 points. Sweet 16, they knocked off Maryland 87-71. And then most recently, they beat Texas Tech in a come-from-behind win, 84-79. They really faced adversity twice in this tournament. And honestly, it was a little tight against Maryland there for a second. And the Maryland game, the main problem was turnovers. They had 11 in the first half and then cleaned it up a little bit in the second half, finishing with just 17, which was an outlier game from them. And once they cleaned it up, they ended up winning by double figures against Maryland. But the UConn game, the Texas Tech game, I mean, the Gators were down by 10 points with 5.5 minutes left against Texas Tech. They won largely because they had more rebounds. And then, I mean, at the free throw line, this was a huge factor in the Texas Tech game. They went 25 of 27 from the line, while Tech went 7 of 13. So they were able to get Tech in foul trouble, shot a lot of free throws. That was the case also against UConn. They've been able to gut out some wins here. And it's not just that. In the regular season, they had a few as well. This team has an impeccable resume. They went 10-3 against the top 25, premier wins over Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, Maryland, Texas Tech, some recently too. Only one loss outside the top 20 that came to Georgia, who finished number 38 in the country. It was a wild game. Florida got themselves down huge to start, and then they crawl their way all the way back, and they actually had opportunities to win. Florida missed some free throws at the end of that game that would have given them the victory. And overall, what else can you say? It's an awesome body of work for Florida with a few blips on the radar. We mentioned the ones in the tournament. They also scored 44 points against Tennessee in a game where Tennessee did not have Zakai Ziegler or Igor Milicic. So there have been a few blips on the radar. They are few and far between, but they are there nonetheless. For Auburn, this team is number 4 in the country right now in overall power rankings. To get here, they beat Alabama State, Creighton by 12, Michigan by 13, and Michigan State by 6. The biggest adversity they faced was in that game, the Sweet 16 matchup against Michigan. They were down by 9 about halfway through the second half, and they end up absolutely crushing Michigan through the last 10 minutes to not only cut the deficit, but win by 13 points. Otherwise, the Michigan State game being 6 points, it was wider than that through most of the game. Essentially, every time Michigan State cut it, you'd have Auburn hit a big three or Johni Broome make a play. So they didn't face as much adversity in the tournament as Florida did. And this team also has an amazing resume. They went 12-5 against the top 25, wins over Houston, Iowa State, Tennessee, Alabama, Michigan State. Kind of the lone scalp that they have yet to take is the Florida team that beat them earlier this year. Their only loss outside the top 6 is against Texas A&M. That was the game after they clinched the regular season title. So on the rematch, these teams did play. They played on February 8th in what was actually a weird game. Florida won on the road without Elijah Martin. The final score was 90-89. to 81. I actually rewatched the game before the shooting of this video to have some more context. But basically, they shot the ball better than Auburn across the board, and they had elite performances from Walter Clayton, Alex Condon, and Thomas Hogg, which is basically what you need to beat Auburn again in this game. The defense was certainly an issue, at least the length that Florida possesses for Auburn. You had a lot of long twos. You had some inefficiency at the rim because of altered shots. They weren't always shot blocks, but Florida was able to alter shots that then ended up being missed layups or missed short twos. And then when they were taking longer twos, it's just a more inefficient shot overall. So the length certainly affected this Auburn team. And then you had an absolutely amazing performance from Walter Clayton. He was hitting a lot of hard threes himself. And the Florida bench really showed up in this game, mostly with Denzel Aberdeen having a solid game. But it wasn't just him. If you look at some of the other players, Urban Klavsar, he had 9 points, and all of them came on threes. He was in the game for, 18 minutes? Shot 3 threes, all of them went in. So, I mean, when you're going to get that from a player who's not even in the rotation, yeah, your situation is going to look pretty good. Otherwise, Florida did have more turnovers than Auburn, 12-8. And on the free throw line, Auburn only shot 14 of 23. Meanwhile, Florida went 15 of 8. Those are the things that will decide a game like this. Auburn had the lead early. Florida took it throughout most of it. Auburn was able to cut it a little bit at the end, but it didn't matter. It was too much for Florida, too little for Auburn, and too late. This particular game, not a ton has changed. Elijah Martin is going to be back. There's going to be solid pace. Florida is 63rd in tempo. Auburn is 134th. Florida does come in 36th in effective height, 8th in rebounding. Auburn is 74th in effective height, 42nd in rebounding. And again, this was a big factor in the first game, not just scoring the ball, which, I mean, Condon and Hogg had an awesome game. And those are their two best bigs in terms of versatility. But then when you're taking, 6'10 Condon off the floor, or 6'11 Condon off the floor, or 6'9 Thomas Hogg, you can move to 7'1 Micah Hanlockton, or 6'10 Ruben Chenyulu, who have different skill sets. They're not as dynamic with the ball offensively, but you're talking about, one, an elite rebounder in Hanlockton, and two, a defensive prowess in Chenyulu. When Auburn's on the floor, you're reliant on 6'11 Dylan Cardwell, 6'10 Janai Broome. It's just way, way, way more thin. If either one's in foul trouble, you're looking at Chaney Johnson coming in, who's 6'7". Immediately, you're ceding a lot of size. It's tough. You basically are walking a thin line with Auburn. You need these players to stay on the floor, and they just don't have as much. This is Dylan Cardwell mainly. He just doesn't have as much dynamic ability as the Florida forwards. Janai Broome certainly does. The only problem with Janai is he is going to be doubled a lot. We'll need him to rely on his passing and kick it out to open guards. He's certainly capable of that, but the health is also a question with him. Shooting-wise, honestly surprised how well Florida has shot the ball of late. They've jumped to 38th in effective field goal, 29th inside, that's 2-point percent, and 71st in 3-point percent. And this has been trending upward. This was a team that was hovering around 100th in 3-point percent throughout the year. Walter Clayton is up to 38.5%. Most of the year he was at 36%. Will Richard and Elijah Martin are a little bit below that at 35 and 35.5. But even Denzel Aberdeen coming off the bench is shooting 36% from three. When you space the floor, Alex Condon and Thomas Hogg, they don't shoot a lot of threes, but 34% apiece. So you do have one sniper in Walter Clayton who hit an unbelievable amount of tough shots in the first game. And then you have above average from every other shooter that you're going to put on the floor. So Florida spacing is an issue. Offensively, they're going to be tough to guard, especially when you have the two bigs, Condon and Hogg, that can move around the floor. That's a huge mess for players like Cardwell, especially. Auburn's 9th in total defense, 25th inside, tied for 6th. They're actually tied with Florida in 6th, defending the three. And they struggled in the first game, but I think the best thing you can say about Auburn's defense is they have sort of righted the ship against other tall teams they faced recently. Now, I don't think anyone is quite like Florida. This is the best front court in the country, in my opinion. But they were able to handle the Michigan front court with Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden and affect a lot of their shots. We had two really inefficient games from those two inside. They handled Ryan Kalkbrenner in this tournament. I think Florida's size is better and it's deeper, but Auburn has at least shown the ability to take care of it so far in this tournament. It is reliant on them staying out of foul trouble. We'll see if they can do that. When Auburn is on offense, this team can definitely shoot. I Coming into the tournament, if these teams hypothetically met in the Final Four, I thought the shooting gap would be wider. It has narrowed a little bit with Florida improving, Auburn regressing. Auburn is 26th in effective field goal, 33rd in two-point percent, 60th in three-point percent. At one time this season, all four of their main shooters were hitting 40% of their threes. And Denver Jones still is. He's at 42%. But Miles Kelly's dropped to 38%. Baker Mazzara, he's down at 37.2. Tahad Pettiford's at 37.4. Now, those are still awesome figures. But the difference is the gap has narrowed between Florida and Auburn from the perimeter. So I no longer think this is a decided advantage for Auburn as it might have been coming into the tournament. They do have the most efficient player on offense. That's Johni Broome. Statistically, he grades out as the number one most efficient offensive player in the country. The only real holes I think you can poke in that, one, how healthy is he? Two, he's certainly going to get extra attention. And when he does, that has been a problem at times for Auburn. If he's in foul trouble, this team is probably cooked. But he's an excellent passer. We saw him in the first game, excellent with the ball in his hands, finding open shooters, getting assists. He can do that here. And he's been awesome at that in the tournament, giving what the defense takes from him, and then dishing it out the rest of the way. But I think Broome is still a key to this game. His health is important. And Florida doesn't have any weakness on defense either. They're 15th in total D, 15th inside, tied for 6th with Auburn, defending the 3. The only reason their defensive numbers lag overall is their lack of ball pressure and getting to the turnovers forced. They don't force a lot of them. They're 209th in turnovers forced. Auburn is slightly ahead in that metric, 169th. But neither team really turns the ball over much. Florida will turn it over more. They are 58th in turnovers committed. Auburn is 7th. So you have that essentially never being a problem from Auburn, but occasionally it is for Florida, as we saw against Maryland. It'll pop up here and there. Otherwise, Auburn definitely fouls more often than Florida, and Florida generates more fouls. So this could be a difference maker in the game. The reason Florida won a couple of these games, honestly, I think is because they generated fouls. With UConn and Texas Tech, if they didn't shoot as many free throws as they did, we're probably looking at a different Final Four matchup. And the other problem with Florida, I guess with Auburn, I should say, they just don't have the depth at certain positions. If Broome comes off the floor, you have no efficiency in the interior. If Cardwell comes off the floor, you begin to cede a lot of size. Moving to Chaney Johnson, 6'7" against every one of the Florida bigs is 6'9" or taller, with Hamlockton over 7'1". Ultimately, a final score, the model projects this about -1 in favor of Florida, putting it inside the spread. I absolutely think Auburn can cover this spread. It is a thin line to walk, especially with the depth. But they do have the guards to match up with Florida. They maybe are even a little deeper when you include Pettiford off the bench. The front court will be seeding size, but they have recently shown an ability to take care of that with Michigan and Creighton. The only issue I have is the health and the depth. If either of those are tested, I think you could look at a live Florida position, something I will definitely be doing as we're looking to play all these games in a couple of ways throughout the day. So right now I'm going to hold my Auburn plus 2.5. If you're waiting, I think a 3 is probably going to come. And then if you're playing this live, if you see fouls affect Auburn in the front court, I'll be looking to take a Florida position and see what we end up with. But that'll be in Discord, of course. If you're interested, it's available for a week for $10 a month for 30, no long-term commitments, projecting every game side total as well as player props, points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, minutes. You name it, we have it. It's in the description, and thank you if you've supported. Game 2. Duke takes on Houston. This game has a 5-point spread in favor of the Blue Devils. A 136 total. It's a slow-paced game. No major injuries. Malik Brown's back. Houston, Malik Wilson, his big fall he took in the Sweet 16 didn't matter. Played in the Elite 8. So let's talk resumes. Duke is currently the number 1 power-ranked team in the country, which should surprise no one. Their margin of victory has been monstrous in almost every tournament game. Mount St. Mary's, Baylor, and Alabama, they won all by double figures. Arizona, they won by 7, but they were up by far more than that through most of the game. It kind of was just a second-half blitz from Arizona that narrowed the gap, but the damage had already been done. And Duke gets another win in that game. Beat them twice. Overall resume, Duke is 5-3 against the top 25. Beat Arizona twice, Illinois, Auburn, and Alabama. Their only losses are to Kentucky, Kansas, and Clemson. All of those are top 25 teams. 2 of them came in November when this team was just, it's a team full of freshmen and transfers. If you're going to play Duke, the best time to play them, at least in this current form, is early in the season before they figured everything out with their rotation. They were starting Caleb Foster at that point in the season. The last game they lost, Cooper Flagg was sick. That was the game where they had the opportunity to win, but he slipped on the baseline, and Clemson ended up with a win. But just a crazy body of work. This team only has 1 loss since November. Houston has a nearly just as crazy body of work. To get here, they beat SIUE, Gonzaga, Purdue, and Tennessee. And these games were not as close as the final score indicates. Gonzaga made it close at the end, but Houston handled business throughout. Purdue, despite this being a 2-point game, Purdue never had the lead by more than 4 points, and that was in the first 2 minutes of the game. So yeah, it was an incredible Herculean performance from Braden Smith, but ultimately Houston never really had that game in doubt. And they are 9-3 against the top 25 too, with an incredible body of work. Beat Tennessee, Gonzaga, Kansas twice, Arizona twice, Iowa State, Texas Tech. Iowa State didn't have Curtis Jones and Keyshawn Gilbert, nor did Texas Tech have Chance McMillan or Darion Williams. But outside of those games, it's still an incredible body of work. They only have 4 losses on the year. Only one of them was outside the top 10 to San Diego State. 3 of the 4 losses came in overtime. None of the losses by more than 5 points, and they've played some incredible teams. It's a slower game. Duke is 271st in tempo. Houston's 360th. Duke has shown a willingness to vary their tempo, and a few teams that have had success against Houston really ran out in transition, so I'm wondering if Duke will try to do that, but ultimately we'll lean on what they've done most of the year. As far as Duke on offense, this team is 10th in effective height, 7th in rebounding. Houston is 257th in effective height, 24th in rebounding. Normally, their talent can hang with taller teams, but man, Duke is just a different animal. No one is shorter than 6'5" on Duke that plays. That's Caleb Foster. Their main guards and starters are all at least 6'6". Keman Malawach is 7'2" at the rim. You're seeding size in a number of areas. Their weakest point overall is LJ Cryer, who's 6'1". We just saw Duke routinely attack Mark Sears, who's of the same height. And then on the inside, when you're facing Malawach, you're going to be throwing Juwan Roberts, Joseph Tugler, and Javier Francis at him. All of those guys are 6'8". So you're immediately ceding 4 inches every time Malawach is on the floor. And he shockingly played over 30 minutes in their last game. They basically have never done that this season, perhaps saving it for the most impactful time of year. But they're going to be definitely taller than Houston, and I'm not sure Houston can even board against this Duke team. We'll see. They've done it against other tall teams, but Duke is just a different animal. As far as the shooting stuff, Duke is 5th in effective field goal, and part of what makes them so lethal, they're 6th in 2-point percent, and they're 7th in 3-point percent. With multiple players that stand 6'6" tall, shooting over 40% from 3. Con Knippel's at 40.1%. Tyrese Proctor's at 41.2%. CN James at 41.7%. Isaiah Evans off the bench is at 41.6%. Cooper Flagg's not far behind at 37.4%. Houston is number 1 in total defense, 5th inside, 13th defending the 3. And we mentioned all the height advantages for Duke. Houston's played tall teams before. Gonzaga is extremely tall. Arizona is extremely tall. Houston defended them with no issue. So this is by far the toughest matchup Duke will see by a decent margin. With that said, Duke, they're coached so well. They relentlessly attack weak links. And when you look at who is the worst defender on Houston, you use worst with an asterisk because everyone's a good defender. But it's LJ Cryer, and he happens to be the shortest player on this team. So unless you come in with a good game plan, which I think Kelvin Sampson certainly will, this could be an area Duke just relentlessly attacks. So even with Houston number 1 in total D, expect Duke to be trying to find areas to take advantage of that. I will say I do think the size matters more for Duke on offense than defense because Houston has shown a willingness to play against larger teams. So how this matchup plays out will be key to the game. As far as Houston on offense, this team is 88th in effective field goal percent, 281st in 2-point percent, and 3rd in 3-point percent. They have a lot of amazing shooters on this team. LJ Cryer hits 42% from 3. Milos Uzan hits 44.5. Emmanuel Sharp at 41.5. The reason their effective field goal numbers come in lower is because this team is 291st in 3-point rate. They have a preference. They like kicking the ball inside of Juwan Roberts and Tugler for inefficient 2-point hook shots from the mid-range. and then it gets other teams out in transition. They are amazing at rebounding, so some of these shots don't matter that much. Like Tugler and Roberts will clean up each other's boards. But man, I don't know if you want to be doing this against Duke, who's fourth in total defense, third inside, seventh defending the perimeter. Malawach is amazing at the rim. I mean, that could be a deterrent for Houston taking bad shots, but Duke kind of forces you into those, especially against Alabama, just running that team off the three-point line, straight into the rim protection of Malawach. I think that makes a lot of sense in this game. Houston doesn't take as many threes as Alabama, but they're very good at shooting them. So you can run guys like Cryer, Uzan off the three-point line into Malawach inside, make them take long 2 points, inefficient 2 points, which Houston loves to do anyway. This is a big issue for Houston in this game, just the length of the other team. As usual, if Houston has success on offense, I think they're going to need to rely on the greasy areas, the effort, the rebounding where they typically succeed. It's just against Duke, a lot of that stuff is easier said than done. On the periphery, neither team turns the ball over much. Houston's a little ahead of Duke in turnovers forced. Actually, a little more than a little, 20 to 173. But you have amazing veteran point guard play for Duke. I don't really see turnovers being a huge issue. Foul margin doesn't really project to be an issue either. Houston fouls more than Duke, but Duke rarely generates fouls, and Houston's deeper than they've ever been. If it does come to the free throw line, Duke does outrank Houston 16 to 12, so that's worth noting. And a few other intangibles to just mention in this game. People might be surprised to see the spread only 5 points. I've seen Duke take some money. If you're a Houston backer, perhaps waiting is beneficial to you, but I'm not sure that's the right approach. First of all, Duke being the best team we've seen since, the 1999 season per plenty of metrics across the board, Ken Pom especially. Houston's right there, number 2 in plenty of them. Houston's actually the number 1 team in Bart Torvik. So don't sell this team short, even though they're not as big as Duke. No one is. And the other thing is that's kind of an intangible. Kelvin Sampson has been an absolute wizard at game planning against teams that are on paper better than him. So when he's an underdog, not only covering spreads, but winning outright as a dog, this is a guy that hasn't lost a game by more than 5 points the entire season. And you can extend this back seasons where he has worse teams. So when the math shakes out, is Duke about a 3.5, 4-point favorite, and we can take some value on Houston? I am interested in backing Kelvin Sampson in this area. My biggest concerns are Duke has been absolutely demolishing teams. You could argue that the metrics maybe do not factor in recent play enough, especially with a team like Duke full of freshman NBA players and transfers. It takes some time to put everything together, and I understand that. However, I think you could also argue level of competition has been an issue for Duke throughout the season. They have not been tested much. They faced a lot of favorable matchups in the tournament so far. Mount St. Mary's is Mount St. Mary's. Baylor plays a 6'6" center. Arizona's playmaker Caleb Love was as streaky as they come. And then Bama, they had a very, very good game plan against. So there's no shame to be had in that matchup. But overall, I'm interested in Houston. I hate to say it. I did also bet against Duke, against Bama, which went poorly. So this has me about as nervous as you can get. Both games, honestly. If these were 2 regular season matchups on a random Saturday, I doubt I would be better betting either game, but it's a Final Four, and we need to take something. So this is where we will side. We're currently showing some value on Auburn and Houston. Confidence level is low, but we're going to play them both and see where this goes. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back for the finals, but until then, good luck. Appreciate the support. Hope you enjoy the Final Four.